Hello, I'm Martin James Hussey. I'm reading a book all about Mr. Tickle, and it's by Roger Hargreaves. It was a warm sunny morning, and his small house at the other side of the wood, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round and have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch, enormously long arms. Mr. Tickle was fast asleep. He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud that woke him up. He sat up in bed, stretched his enormously long arms and yelled an enormous yawn. Mr. Tickle felt hungry, so do you know what he did? Reached out one of his enormously long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, reached into the kitchen cupboard, opened the biscuit tin, took out a biscuit, brought it back upstairs and through the bedroom door and back to Mr. Tickle in bed. As you can see, it's very useful indeed having arms as long as Mr. Tickle's. Mr. Tickle munched his biscuit. He looked out of the window. Today looks very much like a tickling day, he thought to himself. So later that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the wood. As he walked along, he kept his eye very wide open, looking for something to tickle, looking for anyone to tickle. Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. There was nobody about, so he reached up his extraordinarily long arms to a high window ledge. Mr. Tickle pulled himself up and peeped in through the open window. Inside he could see a classroom. There were children sitting at the desk and a teacher writing on the blackboard. Mr. Tickle waited a minute, then reached in through the window. Mr. Tickle's extraordinarily long arms were right up to the teacher, paused and then tickled. The teacher jumped into the air and turned round very quickly to see what was there, but there was nobody there. Mr. Tickle grinned a mischievous grin. He waited another minute, then tickled the teacher again. This time he kept on tickling until soon the teacher was laughing out loud and saying, stop it, all over again. And the children were laughing too. Such a funny sight. And what a day Mr. Tickle had. He tickled the policeman on traffic duty at the crossroads in the middle of town, and it caused an enormous traffic jam. He tickled the greengrocer just as he was peeling apples near his shop window. The greengrocer fell over backwards and the apples rolled all over the shop. At the railway station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. As he left his arm in the air, Mr. Tickle tickled him, and every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes late. Leaving the station, all over the passengers were furious. That day Mr. Tickle tickled everybody. He tickled the doctor, he tickled the butcher. He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the postman, who dropped all his letters in a puddle. Then Mr. Tickle went home. Sitting in his armchair in his small house at the other side of the wood, he laughed and laughed. Every time he thought about all the people he had tickled. So if you are in any way ticklish, beware of Mr. Tickle and his enormously long arms of his. Just think, perhaps he's someone about at this very moment when you're reading this book. Perhaps that enormously long arms of his is already creeping up in the door of his room. Perhaps it opened the door now and coming into the room. Perhaps before you know what is happening, you beware and truly tickled.